I saw this headline go wild yesterday. A bunch of news outlets picked it up. A bunch of you sent it to me and said, hey, have you seen this? What's going on? And you would think that a literal bomb was planted and dismantled in New York City, the way that this headline reads. The Secret Service dismantled a network of more than 300 SIM servers and 100,000 SIM cards in the New York area that were capable of crippling the telecom system, carrying out anonymous telephonic attacks, disrupting the threat before the world leaders arrived at the UN General Assembly. First of all, I hate the word telephonic. I don't even like saying it as I was reading that. But right off the bat, I'm like looking at these photos going, all right, this looks like a sim farm. It sounds like the described a sim farm. What does this have to do with attacking New York City and the UN General Assembly? I tweeted in response to this, said, hey, there's no details, there's no who, what would 100,000 SIM cards do, espionage, or what would it do to the UN? People in my comments were like, oh, it could DDoS the cell network, it could take down the 911 emergency system, it could overflow legitimate cell towers in order to bring in stingrays. I was like, what is everyone talking about? The other number that it keeps coming up here is that it was within 35 miles of the UN. Do you guys realize what 35 miles from the UN looks like? I don't care if you have 100,000 SIM cards and tens of thousands of cell phones meant to disrupt anything in this circle. This circle has like 9-10 million people in it. So my BS alarms were at an 11. Let's just say that. I'm going to play a sped up version of the actual Secret Service statement from this so you guys can hear it straight from them. Before I get to the rest of my thoughts about what the Secret Service said, please just a quick word from my sponsor. All right, I've done a ton of videos about North Koreans infecting the hiring pipeline and getting hired by remote IT jobs, and I get a lot of questions from recruiters or business owners or whoever it is that might be hiring that says, well, what the hell can we do about this? I mean, you literally have the Justice Department warning because this is such a big problem. I'm sure it goes back before this, but one of the first that I saw was this KnowBe4 incident, and they gave us like a really good look behind the curtain of what actually happened. Right here in their article about it, they say our HR team conducted 4 video interviews. We did a whole background check. This person passed it all because they were using a real but stolen US-based identity. So people keep asking me what to do about it, and I'm glad that I'm here to talk about today's sponsor, OneCosmos, who, congrats, a Gartner report just came out and they got named the leader in workforce use cases for identity verification tools. So they have a whole solution for worker onboarding that goes beyond some of the basic background check stuff. Also, who hates when you have to get a new job and you have to like email all your sensitive documents, copies of your driver's license or your passport or whatever it is, to your new job? That just feels like, I shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be emailing this. They call that out. They say, hey, this exposes the applicant to identity theft, and it's a privacy liability for the HR department receiving all these sensitive documents. So instead of dealing with all those sensitive documents that could also be fakes, OneCosmos uses combinations of different technologies, biometrics, and AI to do a more in-depth identity verification. And they do it all on the applicant's mobile device via their app instead of having the applicant have to send all this information to the HR department. So they verify the government documents that the applicant is submitting. They make sure they are not fake identities. And then they combine that with biometrics. If you have Touch ID or Face ID on your phone, and then even Live ID, they will make you take a video of yourself to make sure it matches everything about that. So thank OneCosmos for supporting the channel. Congrats on your new top rank in this Gartner report. Go check them out with the demo and the link in the bio below. And let's make sure that we are hiring the people that we think we are hiring going into this year. Thanks, back to the video. All right, thanks, OneCosmos.
Hello, my name is Matt McCool, and I'm the special agent in charge of the Secret Service New York Field Office. We are making this announcement as a matter of public interest given timing, amount, and concentration of material recovered during a recent Secret Service Protective Intelligence investigation. Following multiple telecommunications-related imminent threats directed towards senior U.S. government officials this spring, the U.S. Secret Service began a protective intelligence investigation to determine the extent and impact these threats could have on protective operations.
Okay, so right there, he's saying that there were some threats to officials in the spring. This might kind of tie into like the Volt Typhoon type stuff when they hacked into the wiretap system at the telephone companies. I get that that's an espionage threat. There's also been a whole lot of like deep fake calling around of officials, pretending to be them, pretending to be their staff. Could be referring to that. Don't really know. A lot of that stuff kind of has happened in the last 6 months, but they're saying, okay, some threat happened in the spring, led them to do some more investigation about these types of attacks, I guess. And that led them to this giant stash of stuff. I'm going to get to what I think actually happened in this, but I just want you guys to know as we watch this, I don't think that a lot of what he is saying here is actually the kind of threat that they're making it sound like. It's giving cops pose in front of like a table of some big bust that they did with like $47 sitting on the table in front of them.
Operations. This was a difficult and complex effort to identify the source of these fraudulent calls and the impact on the Secret Service protective mission. During this period, we leveraged technical assistance and support of federal partners, including Homeland Security Investigations, the Department of Justice, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. We also received phenomenal support.
Okay, so see, identifying the source of fraudulent calls. So far, the only threat is fraudulent calls, which I believe that those pictures of giant sim farm things could enable a lot of spam calls. That's what I said in my tweet. I was like, this is giving ad fraud or spam center.
From our state and local law enforcement partners, to include the NYPD. The investigation led us to the New York tri-state area, where investigators discovered tens of thousands of co-located and network cellular devices capable of carrying out nefarious telecommunications attacks. These devices allowed anonymous encrypted communications between potential threat actors and criminal enterprises, enabling criminal organizations to operate undetected. This network had the potential.
Okay. The first part of that sentence and the second part of that sentence do not gel in my head, right? Okay, yeah, it's going to enable some sort of communications. I'm going to get to what I think these devices are in a second. I think they're VoIP gateways, and the UK is having issues with these because it is not enabling the UK to spy on its own citizens if they're using these. Could be a thing, but that they are enabling attacks. I'm going to go back. What attacks?
Cellular devices capable of carrying out nefarious telecommunications attacks.
So far, we've got fraud calls, right? The jump to attacks is the thing I've got issues with here.
These devices allowed anonymous encrypted communications between potential threat actors and criminal enterprises, enabling criminal organizations to operate undetected. This network had the potential to disable cell phone towers and essentially shut down the cellular network in New York City. These devices were concentrated within 35 miles of the global meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, now underway in New York City. Given the timing, location, and proximity, and potential for significant disruptions to the New York telecom system, we moved quickly to disrupt this network. To be clear, these recovered devices no longer pose a threat to the New York tri-state area. We will continue working towards identifying those responsible and their intent, including whether their plan was to disrupt the UN General Assembly and communications of government and emergency personnel during the official visit of world leaders in and around New York City.
To determine if there was even a threat to the UN. This stuff is all over the headlines of it. It doesn't say it in the headlines of this, but it does say it in the tweet that we dismantled this threat just before the UN General Assembly. Where is the leap coming from here?
Forensic examinations of the equivalent of 100,000 cell phones worth of data is underway. Early analysis indicates cellular communications between foreign actors and individuals that are known to federal law enforcement. Given the sensitivity and complexity of this investigation, we are not able to go into specifics at this time. This is an open and active investigation, and we have no arrest to announce today. Rather, this announcement is designed to safeguard critical infrastructure and responsibly provide the public what we can at this time. The Secret Service will continue to run down all leads until we fully understand the intent of the operation and identify those responsible.
Okay, so they don't know the intent of the operation. They don't know who's responsible. Big leaps to attacks. Even bigger leaps to even bring up the UN General Assembly, because within 35 miles of the UN is like, we're talking almost suburbs of Philadelphia and Connecticut. This is the paragraph that I kind of have issues with, right? So it's like, okay, we took down this big thing. Thank you, cybercrime, spam thing might have hit a speed bump. Cool. But in addition to carrying out anonymous telephonic, hate the word, threats, these devices could be used to conduct a wide range of attacks. This includes disabling cell towers, enabling denial of service attacks, and facilitating anonymous encrypted comms between potential threat actors and criminal enterprises. Guys, I just don't see it. And I don't see the leap from these devices shown on the screen to what they are talking about here. So my friend and security expert Dino Dizovi also chimed in on the thread. He says, it looks like it's much simpler than all of this. It's a SIM farm intended for low-cost calls, but other people could use it for other maybe nefarious purposes. Again, completely agree that this isn't like a legitimate operation here, but we've got headlines that say that from the New York Times, from CBS News, that the Secret Service basically protected the UN General Assembly from this nefarious cyber attack. The other thing Dino agreed on, Dino and I tweeted around the same time about this 35-mile bubble. I actually went and found some like radius drawing map service to take a screenshot of. I think he did too. Very not clear to me that this has anything to do with the UN. Completely agree. We've got some other journalists trying to say like, hey, the Secret Service didn't claim that they foiled any plot in the UN. These like extra sensationalist headlines are the ones that said this. They point out the 35-mile thing too. I don't know. I point out to Andy that like, hey, their tweet says, like their tweet about the thing says the UN General Assembly. The video in this article brings up the UN General Assembly. They also say like, hey, we're not sure that this had anything to do with it, but why are they even bringing it up? Andy says, right, but no claim here that they have any evidence of a plot existed, just that it was capable of some sort of attack. I think we're picking nits at this point. They're the one who invoked the UN General Assembly. I'm sticking with they are at fault for this press release being handled the way that it was by the New York Times and the rest of the articles. But another security expert, Rob Graham, also said, like, hey, this is completely bogus. I want to go through some of the points that he makes because I didn't know about this. He wrote this on his Substack. You can go check it out, called Cybersec. Nice AI generated sim farm picture here, Rob. Love it. Okay, so then he just basically says, hey, this story is bogus. I'm just going to read this. What they discovered was just a normal criminal enterprise. Banks of thousands of cell phones used to send spam or forward international calls using local phone numbers. Technically, this may even be a legitimate enterprise, being simply a gateway between legitimate VoIP providers and the mobile phone network. Actually, now that I'm reading that, I think Dino made the similar point. He said this equipment turns VoIP into cell SMS/voice. So it's useful for letting spammers across the world spam a particular geo. Everything else seems hypothetical of what it could be capable of. So Rob says, hey, someone who, like the beginning of that video message from the Secret Service agent said, someone threatened some politicians. It seems like they probably traced that threat to this spam farm to mask their origin. Rob goes in to criticize the New York Times articles a fair bit. So I haven't shown that on screen yet. So just bringing that up, right? So cache of devices capable of crashing cell networks is found near the UN is the headline that the New York Times went with, which could disable cell towers or be used to conduct surveillance. I completely disagree. Maybe the disable cell tower thing, I think Rob even makes the point, like you can knock over a cell tower by overloading it. Conduct surveillance, I'm not seeing how. Some people in my comments, I made a short video about this on Instagram yesterday. Some people were saying like, oh, they could have used these SIM farms to intercept two-factor codes and that could have been used for espionage. I think that that's like SIM swapping that people are referring to. I don't know how any of the devices shown in the pictures by the Secret Service could have been used specifically to intercept two-factor codes. They're basically just acting as cell phones on the cell network. So if you could intercept a two-factor code with your cell phone and your SIM card, then like, yeah, whatever technique you're using on your device is also capable with these devices. I didn't see anything talked about that would like indicate Stingray, indicate 2FA swapping. They talk about how initial analysis of the data on some of the SIM cards has identified ties to at least one foreign nation, not to be named. But then Rob is going to talk about the people quoted in this article. So I do want to go, not the Secret Service agent. New York Times quoted some experts, and Rob's got a bone to pick with the experts that the New York Times tends to pull on. So one of them is cybersecurity practice at some sort of consulting firm. And he says, my instinct is espionage. I completely disagree. That was like the thing that set off all the alarm bells for me, was like, how could this be used for espionage? In addition to jamming the cellular network, he said such a large amount of equipment near the United Nations could be used for eavesdropping. How? How could a pile of SIM cards connected to a VoIP gateway be used for eavesdropping? Then one of the second people named, and again, Rob has bone to pick with them, we'll get to that in a second, said cybersecurity researcher for basically government type things, said only a handful of countries could pull off such an operation, including Russia, China, and Israel. Why? What was it about this operation that only a handful of countries could have pulled off? Going back to Rob's article, he says both of these experts claim things that are objectively silly. My instinct is espionage, could be used for eavesdropping. This is false. This arrangement could not be used for eavesdropping, and there's nothing particularly related to espionage here. Lewis claims only a handful of countries could pull this off. Rob's like, I could pull this off. Personally, it's just a SIM farm. Sure, there's some money involved, maybe about $1 million, but it could be set up and managed by a single person. It likely wasn't set up all at once with that much money and has been slowly growing for years as its profits are funneled back into setting up more SIM accounts. Completely agree. This just looks like a fraud farm to me. He also points out that this guy, James Lewis, is one of like the go-to cybersecurity quoted people in the New York Times. This link is to a tweet that Rob made in like 2017 pointing this out. He says, when you see anonymous government officials and James Lewis quoted in a New York Times story, you are seeing government propaganda. This just has to do with James's like history, resume, and like how easy it is to kind of like knock on the quotes here. He doesn't really knock on Anthony too much here. He just says like, hey, yeah, Anthony's got a resume that they love. Rob's like an expert of experts, but they're not going to quote him because he doesn't matter compared to some of these other people. In his own words, I think, Rob, if you're watching, you matter. You matter to me. He goes on to describe what the actual equipment is. He put phones in quotes up above because it's not actually a phone, it's a SIM. SIM is a chip that locks you to a specific phone account. So those boxes that you saw with rows and rows of SIM cards has a single computer running it, maybe some radios, 100 physical SIM cards, and it rotates among the SIM accounts when spamming SMS messages. These are the devices that he's talking about at this point. So these antennas are probably the radio, these rows are the SIM cards, and these are all plugged into a computer that can then control it and then do the spam things with each of these tied to a different phone account with the telecom providers. He goes into some of the specifics about running SMS spam messages and like how these people get these SIM cards. They're not just like walking out of Walmart with bags full of 1,000 SIM cards to set off alarms. They're trying to fly under the radar, look as normal as possible. But yeah, this is like why I'm making this video, is like for this to get caught out of the echo chamber of cybersecurity as much as it did with headlines in the New York Times saying that there was some sort of cyber attack that could have disrupted the UN General Council. And like the Secret Service has hyped this up as some sort of national security threat that can crash the whole cell network of New York City. This is why I'm talking about it. And he says, okay, the reality is just some normal criminal threat that sometimes crashes cell towers. SMS is an ancient technology. It works slowly, even in modern cell networks. Too many SIM boxes spamming SMS in one location can indeed overwhelm a cell tower. He then goes on to say, you don't actually need a bunch of SIM boxes to do it. You could sometimes crash a cell tower with a single baseband radio. Ask me how I know. I think that's a story for over beer that I'm looking forward to hearing at one point. While criminals do sometimes crash or overload cell towers, an actual foreign threat can do this much easier than using these SIM farms. And in any event, thousands of cell towers around New York City satisfying 10 million subscribers, so crashing a few won't make much of a difference. This is what I was doing with this, 35-mile radius thing. It's like, okay, crash a few cell towers. The reason that the Secret Service was even involved to begin with is someone used this SIM farm to make threats at politicians. They pulled the thread, they dismantled this. The rest has been just propaganda. All right, a little cherry on top. This article got mentioned in one of those Twitter threads, and I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was recent because it said September 20 something. Time is fake, but it's 2017. Just happens to be the same time of year. But Gareth, the author, chimed in to Dino and said, hey, I wrote about like these kinds of devices in the UK a number of years ago. And it's whether or not these devices are legal or illegal. It goes into a whole bunch of like UK politics specific things. But basically those devices are these co-mugs. I don't know if you say it like that or if you spell it out, but they're a commercial multi-user gateway. These are these VoIP gateways that are used in what they just dismantled. Basically, there was some legislation going back and forth in the UK whether or not these things should be legal because they were getting popular. But the point at the time was that the UK was trying to spy on its citizens for the safety or save the children or whatever the hell they say to break encryption all the time. And they were basically saying, hey, people using these, gateways, these co-mugs, could not be traced. Oh, they couldn't locate them for their emergency services, 999, their version of 911. Above all, what the Home Office seems to have feared most with comugs is a potential inability to spy on anyone using a telephone. In surveillance, state apparatus, well documented here and elsewhere, operates on a dragnet basis with few meaningful oversight mechanisms. And these devices broke that. Anyway, I just wanted to put out a longer one on this today because I got a lot of like back and forth in my comments about this of people saying that like I should look up what denial of service is. I couldn't believe, I was like, is someone telling me to like read a book on denial of service? And then a whole bunch of people saying that like, hey man, normally like your content, but like this was obviously, espionage, or this was obviously Israel and that's why they're not naming who it is. And this is obviously used for two-factor and this could have taken down all of 911 or this could have flooded, something with spam messages. And all I'm getting at is this operation that got taken down with these devices would not be needed to do a lot of those little things that you're talking about. And all those things that you're talking about would not be possible on the scale to disrupt New York City or the UN or anything like that to what you're talking about. Denial of servicing a cell tower, spamming 911 calls until like the whole thing went down. That's not this. That's not this. That's not this. And to read the New York Times to say that this must have been a nation state when you just see like a few devices in an empty apartment on the ground used to like send spam text messages or to send encrypted communications that cyber criminals or maybe nation states are using to talk to people here in an encrypted fashion. I can buy it. But to say that like this was some sort of crazy, obvious espionage attack. Literally, these headlines made it feel yesterday like the Secret Service was going to make a movie about how they dismantled this like weapon that they found, this cyber weapon that they found and they uncovered behind this closed door in, I don't know, Danbury, Connecticut, 35 miles from the UN. I have no clue. All right. Thank you guys. Hope this was helpful. I don't always want to like just scare you guys and say all the bad things. I also want to like point out that when people are, scaring unnecessarily, this feels like we were trying to unnecessarily scare everybody about something that didn't feel that scary to me. If this was helpful, please share it around. Click all the YouTube buttons down below. It really helps me out more than you know. Subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. You probably would have already heard about this if you did that. And thank you very much. Follow for more cybersecurity news.